China got us. It's so unbelievably stupid how much we're letting China get away with it. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. Since starting this show 13 years ago, I've traveled to dangerous, disputed waters in the South China Sea, been tear-gassed alongside Hong Kong protesters, and my crowning achievement, being called disgraceful anti-China garbage by Chinese state-run media. And now, you can become disgraceful anti-China garbage too. Viewers often ask me what they can do to fight the CCP. And if there's one thing that all of us can do to fight the CCP in our daily lives, it's to stop buying stuff from China. And that's more important than ever this Christmas, because CCP-backed globalist companies like Temu and Shein are dumping cheap Chinese crap on all of us. Meanwhile, their profits help prop up the CCP. That's why I'm putting together the first ever unmade in China Christmas shopping catalog. It will be full of products made in the USA and other friendly countries that are also standing up to the CCP. This catalog is for you and everyone you know, so you can use the magic of consumerism for good this Christmas. To fund this shopping catalog, I need your help. Join Operation Take Back Christmas on my Give, Send, Go page. Become a revolutionary retail shopper, an anti-big tech patriot, or a soldier in the American Liberation Army to get exclusive benefits. And most importantly, you'll be part of the work we do at China Uncensored to stand up to the CCP. So click below. Now, on with today's episode. So you know what really gets my blood boiling? Roughly 100 degrees Celsius, but that's literally. Figuratively, it's knowing that the US allowed China to buy a company connected to US intelligence. That's right, China, the very country that killed off CIA informants, managed to buy a company connected to the CIA, as well as other US government agencies like the FBI, the Secret Service, and ICE. That would be like if Gargamel bought a security company in Smurf Village. Who smurfed up and let that smurfing guy buy that? This actually isn't new news. Back in 2016, journalist Jeff Stein wrote a report on Chinese ownership of a CIA-linked insurance company. Stein reported that the Shanghai-based conglomerate, Fosun Group, spent $2.3 billion to acquire Bermuda-based insurer Ironshore, the parent company of Wright USA, which insures agents from the CIA, FBI, Secret Service, and ICE. Fosun Group, meanwhile, is led by Guo Guangchang, China's Warren Buffett. He's a representative in the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference who's very well connected with CCP elites. This was bad, like really bad. After all, an insurance company that insures government agents has a lot of information. As US officials later said, the deal gave Chinese spy agencies a pipeline into the names, job titles, addresses, and phone numbers of tens of thousands of American intelligence and counterterrorism officials, many working undercover, going back decades. But notice that I just said, later said, because it wasn't until a month after Stein's report that the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, began reviewing the deal. Oops. It didn't help matters that Wright USA never mentioned to US government officials about Guo or his CCP connections before the acquisition, which went through in November 2015. Because who cares about national security when there's money at stake? The deal falling through would be the real tragedy here. So how did Fosun Group get away with purchasing Ironshore and its subsidiary Wright USA? Well, here's where the new information comes in. According to this recently published report by AidData, the Chinese government helped finance Fosun's purchase. In May 2015, 4 Chinese state-owned banks, Bank of China, ICBC, Agricultural Bank of China, and Bank of Communications, loaned $1.2 billion to help Fosun International Limited get an 80% ownership stake in Ironshore. So instead of assuming Fosun was friendly with the CCP, now we know, without a doubt, if anyone was foolish enough to still have a doubt. They did it through offshore shell companies, including a special purpose vehicle called Meddlesome Investment Cayman 3 Limited. And it's thanks to that that Fosun's purchase slipped under the radar without any advance notification or CFIUS review. Once Stein reported on the situation and CFIUS actually did its review, Fosun divested from Wright USA and sold it to Star Companies in September 2016. That's almost a year after making the purchase. I'd say better late than never, but never really was the only acceptable option. That same year, Fosun sold Ironshore to Liberty Mutual Insurance, which is important to mention because Ironshore at the time also had the Lexon Surety Group, which issues surety bonds to government contractors, some of whom work on such sensitive projects as U.S. military bases, nuclear power, facilities, embassies, subway systems, and water supply tunnels. Long story short, the CCP had managed to potentially get its hands on a lot of data about agents and contractors working for the U.S. government. Remember, they had already killed a bunch of CIA agents, including the wife of one who was pregnant at the time. But this is just a symptom of a much larger problem. For decades, the CCP has been undermining the West and making itself essential to Western infrastructure by buying everything. And the US has been its biggest target. We've seen this play out over and over again, with China buying up critical manufacturing companies, critical minerals, critical infrastructure, high-tech companies, which are also probably critical, pharmaceutical companies, and property near sensitive military sites, as well as inside them. I know I've been warning about this over and over for years. I don't want to. I shouldn't have to, but it keeps happening. So I'll keep screaming into the void until the void listens. But the scale at which China's getting away with all this is much worse than we imagined, which is horrifying except for the worrywarts who are vindicated. Let out a well-deserved "I told you so," then go back to panicking because, according to AidData's recent report, China's purchase of the CIA's insurer was part of a $2.2 trillion, yes, trillion dollar spending spree from 2000 to 2023. Yes, you heard that right. 2.2 trillion in lending. If my math is right, that's 20 times more than 11 billion. According to AidData's executive director, China's portfolio is 2 to 4 times larger than previously published estimates suggest. And it exposes a very uncomfortable truth to China's strategy. It turns out that all those reports of China pulling the plug on Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure spending and shrinking Chinese overseas development financing, especially in third world regions like Africa, well, like a lazy artist, it didn't paint the full picture, which makes sense since China isn't exactly known for being transparent. According to AidData, Chinese spending hasn't fallen below $100 billion a year since Xi Jinping launched his Belt and Road Initiative. Instead, China's been shifting focus away from promoting economic development and prosperity in developing countries and focusing more on buying up assets in richer, more developed countries. More than 3/4 of China's overseas lending operations now support projects and activities in higher income countries. So BRI is just a load of BS. A majority of China's spending is in sensitive sectors like critical minerals, infrastructure, and technology. You know, the type of things developing nations are full of and need in order to exist. As a director of AidData points out, China is focusing on cementing its position as the international creditor of first and last resort that no one can afford to alienate or antagonize. And guess who was the biggest recipient of Chinese state bank loans? The US of A. According to AidData, the US received more than $200 billion for nearly 2,500 projects and activities that can be found in nearly every state in the country, across a variety of sectors, including critical technology, critical resources, logistics, energy, and other matters of national security. But don't worry, I'm sure letting termites into every facet of your home won't damage the foundation and bring the whole thing crashing down around you. And let me get ahead of the criticism there. I'm not comparing Chinese people to insects. That would be racist. I'm comparing communists to insects. This Chinese investment includes American liquid natural gas projects, data centers, airport terminals, gas and oil pipelines, and high-tech companies. Whew! And here I was worried they might be connected to something important. This is on top of Fortune 500 companies like Amazon, AT&T, Verizon, Tesla, General Motors, Ford, Boeing, and Disney. No, not Disney. You can infiltrate every aspect of America, but not my crappy live-action remake cash grabs. I could list a whole bunch more case studies of Chinese acquisitions, but you get the idea. Much of these Chinese purchases were kept secret through shell companies in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Delaware, and elsewhere. A2 Delaware? A2? Of course, it seems likely that Americans gave China a helping hand. Never underestimate greed, idiots, and greedy idiots. After all, I hear it's quite popular for US law firms to help Chinese companies pass CFIUS approval. Chances are there's a lot more that AidData didn't find, especially since China is relying more on non-disclosure agreements, non-Chinese entities, and redactions to transaction documents. There's also evidence that Beijing is pivoting towards more exotic credit instruments that are more expensive and difficult to track, and far less likely to appear in audited financial statements, stock exchange filings, and bond prospectuses. Since Trump's first term in office, the US has been stepping up scrutiny on Chinese investments. But far more needs to be done. It's not just acquisitions we need to keep an eye out for. We should also beware of CCP-linked elites sneaking their way into positions of influence in businesses, even those that Chinese companies divest from. Take Ironshore. Yes, Liberty Mutual purchased Ironshore from Fosun in 2017. But that didn't free Ironshore of Chinese influence, because Chinese influence is like HPV. Even when you don't see a flare-up, it's always there, and almost everyone's affected by it. Wang Chunbin, the current co-chairman of Fosun and member of both the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference and the CCP, is currently on the Ironshore board. He's been on it since January 2015, even before Fosun even purchased Ironshore when it owned Wright USA. I wonder what role he played in Wright USA's acquisition. It's time we get serious about getting liberty from China, because this is all making my blood boil, figuratively. Remember, the best way you can fight the CCP in your own life is to stop buying products made in China. So join us at Operation Take Back Christmas. Click below. I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.